here. My name is Ann Wink. I work for the International Baccalaureate. I am a regional development specialist, and my job, main part of my job, I market the IB, but I work with school districts, schools that have multiple programs. And before I even came to the IB, my passion has always been the underdog kids, the finding kids that they don't look like they're gifted, they don't look like they should be an IB, but they're very smart and they deserve the same kind of education as everyone else. So I think that's why Paul Campbell asked me if I would moderate this panel. And it has been such a neat experience because these three people are amazing. I have no doubt this is going to be a great session because just the talking with them, hearing their stories, and they're just the kind of people that you need in these kind of schools and that make a difference. So I think you're in for a real treat this morning. My panel members are Eric Brant on the far end. Raise your hand. He's the IB coordinator at Harding High School in St. Paul, Minnesota. In the middle, Allison Harris. She's the principal at Branson Middle School in Charlotte, North Carolina. And Allison flew in last night to be on this panel because she was chosen as a Principal of the Year and is in the Principals Academy in New York City. Isn't that great? So we appreciate that Allison made the effort to come and join the panel. And last but certainly not least is Ron Whitmore. He's principal of John Smith Elementary, which is a K-8 school in Chicago, Illinois. Before we start off on letting them tell you more about themselves and their story, I want you to tell us something about you. So if you are from what our description in the program, an urban district, would you raise your hand? Almost all, okay. If you, what was some of the other things? Yeah, MYP. How many of you are MYP, PYP, DP? How many of you have a central office job that you oversee IB programs, okay? How many of you coordinators? Classroom teachers? Administrators, building administrators? Great, we have a really diverse and good mix. But just before we start, because we've been kind of throwing this question around and wondering how you're going to react to some of the things they're going to tell you in their stories, do any of you have screening, or do kids have to pass certain tests or go through a screening in order to be in your IB school? It's okay. Okay. Okay, just don't throw anything at us, okay? No, so anyway, I'm gonna starting with Eric. I'm gonna let them tell you a little bit about their school, their story, and then I've got some questions for the panel, and then we want you to ask questions of the panel. So, Eric.
Morning. I was actually hoping to go last.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
My name is Eric Brant. I am from Harding High School in St. Paul, Minnesota. St. Paul, to those who don't live in Minnesota, you might think it's kind of like Prairie Home Companion, Scandinavian land. But nothing actually could be further from the truth. It is a very diverse city with all sorts of large city problems. And I'm also joined here this morning by Joel Gullickson, our film and TOK teacher, and Dean Keenan, one of our administrators, so they can help tell the story and correct things if I get them wrong. We've had a diploma program since 1993. We have very large numbers of students in our program. We actively encourage kids to pursue what used to be called the certificate, now the diploma program courses students. We have well over 1,000, over 2,000 students taking accelerated, which we used to call pre-IB, or the IB classes. And somehow, wonderfully, all of our classes and all of our students testing, if you do the number crunching, it looks, you walk into any classroom, it basically reflects the diversity of the whole school, which is 90% minority, 90% free and reduced lunch, well over 65% of our students don't speak English at home. So there are a lot of obstacles that we face similar to all of your schools face, and the IB has been a perfect fit for our school. So that's my intro part.
Good morning, everyone. I am Allison Harris. Again, I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. Branson IB Middle School has 1,100 scholars, a little over 1,100, and we serve 6th through 8th. So we are an NYP school. We are a part of what we call the West Corridor of Charlotte. So if anyone's familiar with the Charlotte community, we oftentimes say it's the tale of two cities. So you can travel about 5 to 7 miles away and get to really affluent neighborhoods and really high-performing schools that have as little as 4% free and reduced price lunch in their population. Our school has about 81% of our scholars who qualify for free and reduced price lunch. We are overwhelmingly African American, about 75%, but we have a growing population of Latino students, scholars who speak English as a second language, and about 12% of our scholars are special needs. They have special needs. We are also a part of a groundbreaking initiative called Project Lift, and it's a private-public partnership to support the 9 schools in the West Corridor. My scholars, many of them feed to a high school that has a graduation rate of 50%, which is highly unacceptable. And so our community has stepped up and decided to do something that is groundbreaking. So I'm excited to share a little bit more about Project Lift and this community partnership and how they are helping to ensure that our scholars will be successful through high school graduation and beyond.
Good morning. Good morning again. I'd like to read something to you before I tell my story. Just a quick little note from Ralph Ellison, okay? And in this little paragraph, he writes it as if he's a child, okay? So if you can show me how I can cling to which is real to me, while teaching me in a way into the larger society, then and only then will I drop my defenses and hostility, and I will sing your praises and help you make the desert bear fruit. My name's Ron Whitmore. I'm the proud principal of Smith Elementary School. You've heard a lot about Chicago Public Schools in terms of school closings and the violence that is going on. Yes, I am in the hood, and I love it. We have about 530 beautiful students who are brilliant. Chicago is very interesting in that I've seen, from a central office perspective, what happens to communities like mine. Gentrification, schools close, they lock out the indigenous population, and they bring in a new curriculum, a new program, and the school flourishes. I would not sell my soul that way. We have a PYP program, an MYP program. Every student that walks through my door is an IB student. I received 3 failing schools in less than 6 years. I'm flanked by 2 wonderful individuals, Donia Donnella, my literacy coach, and Marcy Bird, my IB coordinator. When we got to Smith, our test scores were 19 and 20% in reading and math, and now we're at 53 and 73 in reading and math. But the work is not over. I work for Chicago Public Schools, but unfortunately, Chicago Public Schools does not own my thinking or my talking. So I will be very direct in what I share with you. I'm excited to be here to tell you our story and to hear your thoughts about education in the IB world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, panel members. See, you're in for a treat. And I work with Chicago Public Schools. I'm assigned that district. And I said, I can't believe I haven't met Ron before. And he said, oh, yeah, I can believe you haven't met me. But I'm going to his school. When I'm getting back in Chicago in August, I'm dying to go to his school and meet those kids and the teachers. So all of you have said you're in, tough places. And I actually was like what you said when I first heard about the school you were from. I thought, that's like, a great, probably a little community, wonderful city. No, because of where it is. But I have learned it's not. So all of you, I know, must have barriers, must have a lot of things that you have to fight on a daily basis to overcome in order to be IB, because these are not the kind of schools that most people think would be an IB school. And I know that while you're doing great things for kids, that there has to be things that you have to deal with. So I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to start, this time I'll start down here, okay? I will start with Ron. What's the greatest barrier at your school, and what have you and your team done to overcome that roadblock?
You know, I think it's been a daunting task, and I don't think it's over yet. When we talk about schools that service specific populations, the first thing that school systems talk about is socioeconomic status and free and reduced lunch, right? And we all know that that's only how kids eat. It's not how kids learn. So it's an equity trap, right? They push us right into the middle of an equity trap. So we've also talked a little bit about this morning about what is an IB student, or what does an IB student look like, right? And I bet if we surveyed individuals in this room, we'd have a plethora of varied answers about what that is, right? When we got to Smith, we had an opportunity to be a gifted school. We had an opportunity to be a true magnet school or a neighborhood magnet school, as I mentioned earlier. And when we went around the country and looked at IB schools, everybody talked about how diverse they were. And they were only diverse on the playground because I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me sitting in the classrooms. But I love the philosophy. I loved the global mindedness, right? I love the constructivism that's rooted in what we know about IB. And we begin to kind of change the perception, right? So what we deal with too often is just that. How they see IB, who they see IB for, how we see our students, what equity traps we fall into, and how do we help our system change that perception while at the same time market us. Lastly, I'm so sick of conversations about test scores. I just really am, because I'm not a principal because I tested well. I'm a principal because I play in the sandbox well. I can have a conversation. I can get along. I can think globally. So perception is one of the biggest problems we face.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just want to echo many of the things that Ron has said. Obviously, working in a high-need urban school, our scholars come to us with so many needs, both academic and non-academic. And I actually arrived at Ranson just 2 years ago, July of 2011. And my IB coordinator, Shaniska Howard, has been a great visionary for what IB should look like for a school like ours. And I think she would say that the school had been waiting for someone to come and believe that all scholars who walk in that door of Ranson IB Middle School are scholars, and they can do. But one of the major barriers we had, of course, is meeting the needs of our scholars and the whole child. You're talking about children coming to school daily with mental health issues, medical issues that are not being met, just a number of things. And so the IB learner profile has really been how we have really looked at how do we teach our scholars the skills they need both in the classroom and outside of the classroom. So very excited that we have started an advisory program that is rooted in the IB learner profile. So for 45 minutes every single week, we stop the math, science, the language arts, that it's not about test scores. It's about helping to develop our children so that they can be successful and be proud of who they are and walk into those academic classrooms with confidence. And so we spend time teaching our scholars how to be reflective, how to have those skills of being principled, because we have to. They're children and we have to teach them. And so that's really how we have addressed the barriers, and it has been amazing how it's changed the culture of our scholars as well as our teachers. And so when we walk into the academic environment, the learning environment, our scholars are there and they're ready to learn. And so it's really allowed us to have that tie that bonds. So that's how we're addressing our barrier.
One barrier that I want to talk about, I think, is changing the mindset. Changing the mindset of staff, of students, of the community, and how they think about the IB program, the diploma program, is a barrier that I've worked really hard to address and are most of our staff work really hard to address as well. You have to have a very different mindset. And for years, I would go to IB trainings and events like this, and I would feel as if I was the only person like me, working in an environment like mine. And I would be with people working in international schools who have very strict policies about who gets in and who doesn't, who does a diploma. And I was coming from a school that has a completely open access program. Anybody who wants to try to take a challenging class takes it. We as teachers over the last 10 years have shifted away from a more kind of the elite kids take the classes, kind of like what Natasha, the graduate yesterday, was speaking about yesterday morning, to we want everyone, as you were saying, we want everyone is a scholar, we want everyone challenging themselves. Many of our teachers, part of the changing in mindset, we actively search out students and encourage them to take accelerated or IB classes. Some might even accuse me and others of stalking them. But we see potential and we want to encourage them. And so often, kids are just waiting for someone to acknowledge their potential and just ask them, like, would you take Algebra 2 Accelerated next year, knowing that will hopefully lead to analysis to Math SL. Like, you seem really good at literature. Why don't you try World Lit IB next year? With that in mind, there's a few students I just want to mention. I had Elaine in my class, my World Lit 12 IB class this year. Elaine had never taken an accelerated or IB class at Harding. It's her 12th grade year. She was, and she came to me the first day of school. She's like, I'm tired of not challenging myself. I want to take at least one IB class before I finish here. And I easily could have said to her, sorry, you don't have the prerequisites. You've never were in the class last year. I'm sorry, it's not going to work out. But that's not the mindset we have at Harding. Like, you want to take a challenging class? Come on in. I'll support you as much as I can. I will meet you halfway. You have to do your part, but I will meet you halfway. I will meet you after school. I'll supply you all the materials. And I connected her with the teachers from the previous year. And she did all the work, and she made it through, and she did the exams. A couple years ago, I had a student named Eric who decided in 12th grade year that he did want to do the diploma. I had multiple teachers come up to me and tell me, he's not going to make it. Why are you having him do it? He's not going to get the diploma. And my response was, that's not the point. He wants to do it. He needs to be challenged. And part of the differing mindset that we have at Harding is our goal maybe isn't getting a kid from a 4 to a 7 on the IB exam scores. Our goal is more getting students from perhaps a 3 to a 4. Our goal is college preparation, not necessarily getting a 45 on your IB diploma. Our goal is offering more support, building the program, getting as many students as possible to challenge themselves. And every year, students come back and tell us that they were more than prepared for college. Perhaps the other diploma program teachers, coordinators in the room know that they've had the same experience. Kids come back leaving diploma program schools, and they are very prepared for certainly American colleges. And they feel college is easy for them, actually. And that is such a relief for all of us. Like, we got them ready. That is our goal. That's our primary goal. So working on changing that mindset. And it takes a long time to change the narrative, a community's narrative of a school. If they perceive your school as, oh yeah, you're the ghetto school on the east side, where the riots happen. Okay, yeah, they happen from time to time, but that's not the whole story. That's a tiny, tiny bit of the story. There's all these beautiful students who are so smart and so gifted, and we have this fantastic IB program. That's the story that needs to get out, and it takes a long time. A lot of hard work of trying to get newspaper articles, going out and meeting with the community, and changing the story of how people perceive your school. So that's another barrier.
Wow. So I heard from all of you that probably the biggest barrier is other people believing what you believe about your students. But there is not a doubt in my mind that these three people in their leadership positions believe that all kids are good kids and deserve a chance to excel at the highest level. But, what I want to know is, what about the teachers? The next question I have for you is, we all know that teachers are the key to success of any school. and especially at IB school. I know when I first came to work for IB, I said I wish that every school, I became aware of IB, every school in the world could be an IB school, because it is the way you should educate kids. That's just, especially the primary years, that's a no-brainer. For elementary school, they're curious, they want to inquire. But the thing I said is we can never staff every school with teachers that will believe in the same philosophy. So, tell them how large your school is, how many teachers you have on staff, and then how do you choose the right teachers? What is your process? And I know, Eric, you don't do all the hiring, but you have an input, I would certainly imagine. A little bit, okay. And what procedures does your campus use? And even if you didn't hire them, there has to be somebody at the top of your school that believes like you do that all kids should be IB kids. So tell me about your teachers.
Hiring teachers is a crapshoot, guys. It really is, right? So at the end of the day, yeah, we have a hiring committee. Yeah, we take them through a plethora of questions. We encourage them to come in and teach. But teaching at Smith for a 45-minute lesson one day is a lot different than teaching at Smith 184 days. Because my babies will wear on you. Right? Now think about it, right? They're no different than any Fortune 500 CEO. They look for the weakness, they identify it, they will exploit it, and they will market it. Right? We encourage that. That's good. But the reality is, identifying quality teachers that can come in and have high expectations for your babies every single day is a daunting task. Nobody wants to go to school and work for poor black or brown kids. I'm sorry. It's difficult. And then the teacher lounge becomes the haven for chaos and mess and corruption. And then the horrible principal that's beating you over the head to make sure that you care about the babies that walk into the school, it becomes a reality. So, yes, our teachers work hard. Yes, they're faced with some difficult days. We have systems that don't support or celebrate them. And the stars and frogs and lunches that I give them once a month isn't enough, right? We try to be supportive. We try to model the behavior we expect our teachers to have. We try to tell our kids that they're gifted, that they're knowledgeable, that they're inquirers, that they're caring, that they're kind. We work with universities. We have a partnership with Loyola, who has been certified to teach or give IB certifications to their teachers. They're going to be coming in doing some real-time lessons with our kids over this school year. We've had a great partnership with UIC that has actually come into our school and in real time taught methods class during the school day. We have grade level teams that help us talk about the work that we need to do, both horizontal and vertical. But at the end of the day, I have never in the 10 years that I've been there had 100% of my staff bought into what we do, right? And it doesn't matter the upfront conversation. But when Ronnie Whitmore comes in because, I've been out doing what I do all night, or my mom's boyfriend beat her up, or I was shot at last night, and I don't have a person checking in with this child saying, hey, are you okay? But I, in other words, get in their face and berate them for not doing what I need them to do, it becomes a difficult task. So it's perpetual. It's a conversation that always happens. We have not figured it out yet. I'm just being honest. But I also don't allow people to work for me that don't care about my babies. So I invite you to leave. if you don't care about my kids. It's just that simple. My staff will tell you. We're about 65% of our staff that really buys into what we do. But that other percentage, we need help. Just being honest.
Excellent. Well, let me just say, you guys probably see me doing a lot of smiling. These gentlemen are speaking to my heart right now. So I hope you're hearing what I'm hearing, because this is amazing. So this might resonate with some of the administrators out there in the audience. When I arrived at Ranson IB Middle School in 2011, I had 28 teacher vacancies out of 75 teachers. 28. Right? And so you wonder, how do you sustain anything, much less IB, when you have that many vacancies? And so literally the work that Shaniska Howard had been doing and had done over the years literally walked out the door. And so again, how do you sustain a program and a culture when that happens? And so we really looked at the perspective, because the school unfortunately has been one that has been persistently low performing, one that has had a negative image in the community, of how do we change our culture? And so we really focused on the school, the student culture. And so that's where that IB learner profile pieces come in. And that has been in and of itself a recruiting tool, because we have candidates walk through our school. We intentionally do a school tour so they can see. I have 1,115 scholars. There's no telling what they're going to do. And because I have someone in a suit, doesn't really matter. So we walk them through the school. We allow them to see, this is who we are, and can you handle this? Can you handle our babies? Because they're going to give you a run for your money. I know many of you are looking for very specific things of what to do, and so I do want to provide that to you. I'm one who I need very outlined things, and so I mentioned before Project Lift is a public-private partnership, and so we have been extremely intentional about how we recruit and retain highly effective teachers. That is one of our major pillars of Project Lift, because schools don't work with great teachers without great teachers. So we must have great teachers in the classroom. So we do a number of things. The first is we take every single candidate through a screening process through public impact teacher competency. So public impact, you can Google it. It is a set of teacher competencies for urban school teachers. So what are the competencies that looks like these folks really have if they're going to do well in a school? And the first one is belief in learning potential. That is a non-negotiable. I cannot teach you how to believe in my babies. I cannot, and I will not. Okay? I can teach you how to teach. Can't teach you how to believe in my baby. So that's a part of that competency. And we take folks through that initial, it's a 5-question screening, takes about an hour and a half as they tell stories. And if they get past that screening, then they move to the next phase. And so once they come into my building, again, we do the school tour, and I want to see their faces. I want to see how they react when my babies do what they do. And at the end of that tour, I ask, tell me 2 things, 2 glows and 2 grows. Tell me 2 things you saw that are great and 2 things that didn't look so great. And if they say nothing, I say, ooh, this is not the place for you, because we have work to do. My babies still need to learn how to read. we have some growth to do. The next thing we do, probably like many of us, a mini teach. So we put them right in the classroom with our scholars. We say a 15-minute lesson. You've got 15 minutes to make it happen. They have to choose the lesson, the objective for that lesson, and they go and make it happen. We also have them to do a traditional Q&A. So that's really important for us as well. That includes a teacher panel. And if any of you guys know, if you let some teachers talk to a future candidate, they kind of give them the real deal. And so I love that. So that has really allowed us to really get to a point, we're not at 100%, but we are so much closer. I'm so proud to share that at the end of this school year, after 2 years, we went from 28 vacancies to 10. So I only had to replace 10 teachers this year. So now we're talking about building a culture, some stability that is going to continue to grow and turn over. And lastly, for those, if anyone from the district is in the room, we don't hear this often with educators, but if you have any flexibility to compensate and reward teachers, and I know that's a sticky topic, but we reward. If we want to recruit a highly effective teacher, and I bet all of us in this room, if there were a group of teachers and they're great, there's some in the room, we recruit and we reward. So we give bonuses to folks that we are recruiting across this nation. I've been able to hire teachers from Detroit, from New Orleans, from Maine, because I bring them in and I say, this is as much about me choosing you as you choosing us. And I want to show you that I value you, and I know that you're going to come in and do this work for our scholars so that they can be successful, because for my babies, it's life or death. It's life or death for them. And so I've got to pull out all the stops.
For the people standing in the back, just so you know, there are seats up here. Please just come up if you want to sit down. Nobody will mind you walking up, so they're right up here. So all of our teachers are good looking and above average at all times. Actually, as diploma program coordinator, I unfortunately or fortunately don't have much say in the hiring process. But what I try to do is similar to how we invite all students in to take IB classes. When a position comes open, for example, if I know a chemistry teacher is leaving, I invite all of the chemistry teachers to let me know, and then usually myself and one of the assistant principals, we interview them, all the interested parties, we make a recommendation to the principal who authorizes that person will now be the teacher. So that's basically my involvement in who's teaching mostly the IB or accelerated classes. And I have come to really believe in that system because it's transparent. Sometimes people will say, well, there's that opening, that person really should do the job. And my first instinct is like, to back up. Maybe there's people that you and I don't even know who should also be considered. They deserve an equal chance. So opening it up, and I've been delightfully surprised just about every time who has stepped forward. Another thing I'd like to say is, in terms of my job as diploma program coordinator, is I kind of feel like my job is to say yes a lot. Like, someone has an idea, my job is to find the funding to make it happen, or to say, yes, you can do that. You want to teach that class? Awesome, let's make it happen. Because as you were talking earlier, teachers hear so much no. So I kind of view my job as much as I can empower them and get them the training they want, the things they need, that's my role. I would say an obstacle or something that we struggle with is, even though our school is 90% minority, our staff is certainly not. And I don't have the answer. Our school is about half Hmong. There are very few Hmong teachers in our district. It would be beautiful if so many of our students had teachers who reflected their cultural background and ethnic background. So that's a struggle we face.
Okay, so IB has great staff development. I mean, what's one of the things that I found that I thought was very strong when I was in a district and we did IB. I said, they don't just sell you a program. They make sure that they train your teachers, they keep them trained, they redo their staff development a lot. Access has been a huge on our agenda for the past 10 years. So we really have in this country, in the U.S., pulled in a lot more schools that you wouldn't think would be IB schools. So, in fact, the Cayman Islands, their goal is that every state school or public in the Caymans will be IB. But I just wondered from you three if you had suggestions or things about what kind of staff development could we do that would help your teachers in the situations they're in. Okay.
Well, a couple things. I think from an IB perspective, we're all here because we obviously love the program and what it can do for our professional development, our learning, our staff's learning, and our students. One of the things that I would encourage IB to do is continue to have these kind of conversations. I've been involved with IB for about 7.5, 8 years, and when I come to these conferences, I don't get to have this conversation. This conversation needs to be a must. It needs to be recommended at every conference that we attend. One of the things when Ann and I had a conversation, and she mentioned it earlier, she said, I've been to Chicago a few times, but I've never been to your school. IB also needs to ask the question, right? And it's not just about them taking you to the schools they want you to, because school systems are going to always take you to the best of the best of the best, right? So I would just encourage IB to continue to do the research about the schools. They know our stories. And when you come to our cities, really stop in and look at what we're doing. and then use workshops to celebrate IB schools who are living the IB characteristics. Now, living the IB characteristics. I'm going to say that again, living the IB characteristics, right? Going into our schools where it's life and death means you really have to implement those characteristics and change your environment in order for students to feel safe and successful, right? And really figure out a way in the IB world to celebrate what that diversity looks like in America, right? I mean, obviously the global perspective is very important, and the diversity that we see even at this conference is clear, present, and evident. But we need to really celebrate that in America in a way that helps us change how we think about education and who's being educated and who IB is really for, right? So I think those are opportunities to have great conversations around the work that we do and continue to do in the inner city across America.
Yes, I couldn't agree with Ronald more. Just being introduced to IB. So when I joined Ranson, this was my first introduction to IB as an educator. And so I really had to take a step back and look at the landscape. Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools does what many school districts do. It's an elitist program, not really should be on the school in the west side. It's just kind of there. And so we pushed the envelope, Shaniska pushed the envelope and said, we're going to do something different. And so what I would ask of IB is, as you work with districts and regions, really push and help them understand what this is about. Obviously, it's very political and bureaucracy, and it's a lot of stuff, but really, take ownership and say, this is what we envision IB to be, like this is ours, and let us support you in helping to see that, because so many times, particularly in our district, my district, I'll speak to that, it's very much the full magnet tested entry school. Well, guess what? Those babies were already on grade level and already, so I'm not really sure what we're doing here. We're just kind of stamping it on and saying that's IB. And so I think just a greater partnership with the districts to help them understand so that they can better and really allow more autonomy within the schools. Again, it's life or death for my baby, so I get very creative and I do what I need to do for them.
In terms of training and the kind of workshops IB could offer, the thing about the diploma program is, as those of us involved in it know, it culminates in all these exams. And so it would be very helpful if we received more training and more opportunities to scaffold back the skills that students need to be successful on those exams. And students who are in Title I schools, very urban learners, many of whom do not speak English at home, they have kind of needs that have not ever been clearly addressed, and there's many different kinds of skills, approaches you can use as teachers to help these students, and a lot of it involves identifying the skills they need and scaffolding them back to ninth grade, perhaps even earlier, depending on the school. So very intentional kind of scaffolding skills would be very helpful to have specific training about for urban schools from the IB.
That's kind of what I expected you to say, because I'm thinking a lot of times your teachers may go and they don't see a lot of teachers in the training that are dealing with the things they're dealing with.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed as a literature teacher, I mean, I'm a workshop leader as well, but my students, their world is the east side of St. Paul and the Maplewood Mall just north of there. That's most of their lives, okay? And then we're reading this literature from around the world, and that expects them to have this kind of depth of cultural knowledge that requires a whole lot of work on my part and the other teachers' part to bring it into the classroom, as compared to international school students who, through their own good fortune, have traveled all over the place, and have all these amazing resources. And for them, slipping in and out of these different worlds of literature is not such a big deal, and their teachers are used to that. But our students do not have those kind of opportunities. So
right.
How to bring that world into the classroom.
Okay, great. So I know that since you all have done such a wonderful job and we're being recorded, that you're going to become famous. So infamous, it could be. So if tomorrow you got a phone call that said we would like to fly you to The Hague and you're going to get to meet with the Director General, and you're going to also get to meet with the Board of Governors and tell them, because they do believe in access, tell them what they could do to help support schools like yours. What would you say?
I would say save your money and you fly to me. And you come to my school and be in my school, or any of our schools, or perhaps any of your schools, for 3 days, 3 or 4 days, and just be there. Go to the classes, meet with the teachers. Don't do a 2-hour drop-in, head out. You know, any school can look good for that amount of time, okay? Any school, maybe. So, but I would much rather have them come and be with us, because then they would understand in a real way what it's like to be in our environments and the joys and the challenges of it.
And after they make those visits across the country, do a comprehensive analysis and build on those best practices and celebrate the models of excellence so that we can share. Again, I came into the IB world just in 2011, so I immediately did a search. Just what information can I find? I found very little about how urban schools were doing this work. And so I felt like, gosh, why am I having to reinvent the wheel again? I hate doing that. I have a little phrase, don't reinvent the wheel, put rims on it. You guys get it? I hate, why are we keep reinventing the wheel? So, visit the schools, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Build a comprehensive analysis of best practices for PYP, NYP, DP, and let's share. We need to build a community of learners, because we're almost, it seems as if, a fragment of this organization that maybe has not been really looked at. And so we need that. We need that to flourish. And the reality of the situation, there are many more schools and districts and scholars around this country who need this opportunity and access to IB as well.
I agree with my colleagues, but if they wanted to give me a ticket, I'd probably take it. I would just ask the question, are you sure you want the truth, right? And what I would really ask is that they really recognize, from a governing body's point of view, that you have the power to authorize. And what are you authorizing in America, and why? Right? I chose IB because it could change my children's lives forever. I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it. So what are you prepared to do from a governing body? I keep looking at Ted. I know he's getting tired of me looking at him, but I love Ted. Ted's a great guy. But as we begin to think about what we're doing in IB in America, what does it look like for the kids that we don't want to educate in America? What does it look like for the kids that we would rather lock up than teach? Right? So when we begin to have those kind of conversations about the people that are making decisions, Chicago's closed 50 schools and opening, I don't know, however many IB schools. It's a bunch of crap. I'm sorry. It's how I feel. Right? When we have schools in the inner city that are thriving, but nobody wants to talk about it. And because IB is the hottest ticket in town, let's use our power to be equitable, fair, and honest about how we feel about education and who we want to educate. And that would probably be the last ticket I would get from the governing body.
Well, they have been great. Let's give them a big hand. And now, as promised in the program, there's going to be ample time for you to offer your own insights or to ask further questions of them. I'm going to have to come around with the wireless mic because we're being recorded, so we can't hear your comments if we don't. So do any of you want to share some of your successes or your strategies and what you've done, or do you want to ask them questions, if you'll just...
I would just suggest that in the past year or two, the IB has put in a category or level 3 training for supporting diverse learners with a focus on special needs. Maybe there should be one category 3 for supporting urban schools and supporting teachers in urban schools. Look at the crowd you have here. And I'm sure there are a lot of IB coordinators and administrators here that would love to have their teachers have a workshop, 3-day workshop on strategies for supporting urban kids.
Thank you, that's a good suggestion.
For the record, I did apply for a Category 3 training for just that, and it was turned down. So maybe I'll reapply.
Hi, I work in Chicago as well. I run a DP program, and I was just wondering if you could comment on, as our DP programs are expanding in Chicago exponentially, we're getting more and more girls. Our ratio of girls to boys is we have many more girls than we have boys in our programs. And that's a concern for me in terms of access to the IB for our male students. And then for my specific program, I have difficulty, and I think this is across Chicago, and I don't know how it relates to your programs, but recruiting and retaining and supporting African American boys in our program. That's a big concern for me. I've tried various strategies with different levels of success. I think the best this year has been partnering with a local university and like an African American fraternity with these students. But if you could give me other suggestions, I would appreciate that.
So a couple things. One, and you know that Chicago really hasn't grown its IB programs in high schools as consistently as it has in elementary schools. And we're so far apart, right, in terms of being able to have access to those programs, even if you wanted to after middle school, is something that Smith has been dealing with for a long time. Remember in the Ellison quote, right? If you can show me how I can cling to which is real to me, right? In terms of how you recruit students. If you allow those students to have their voice, work with elementary schools. What school are you at? Prosser. Right? Try to figure out in all the changes that we're going through how to continue to network with those elementary schools as a feeder program. I know we've tried to work with Michelle Clark. Clemente's coming on board. That's a little closer to us. But our students have real issues about how do they get from point A to point B. Because if I have the wrong color hat on or shirt on, you know, I could end up a statistic, right? But there are conversations that we need to push our central office to have. And our networks whenever we figure out how they're going to be formed.
I want to share a success story. We've been in the program for the last 3 years. We're the only school, elementary school, in my district that's IB. There's 26 26 elementary schools. PSJA, Far San Juan Alamo, I am as far south as you can go by the Mexican border, 3 miles in Texas. We have, out of 800 students, we have 90% of them limited English proficient. We do a dual language program, and for the last 7 years, we've sat there real quietly doing our work, and for the first time in history, they've asked me to mentor 7 principals because they want for them to become IB. But what I do want to share is that our school is low performing and nobody believed in our students, and we're not going to be in a growth plan because Texas is now implementing a new testing program. It's now called STARS. It used to be TAX, and about 15 of our schools in our district will be on a growth plan because they didn't make the grade, and because our children have been taught conceptually, we scored everything in the above a 70. So I'm so happy to hear that, to see that indeed we have been making progress with those kids that nobody believed in. One last thing that I do want to share is one of the central office officials really gave me a lot of, I struggled with that person because she didn't believe that we were going to be able to stay in the program for a while. Well, now she retired, and she came back. She's selling annuities, so she asked if she could speak to my staff, and I said, sure. And she says, wow, I really see what you're doing. Well, she had never been to my school. Anyway, and she says, I emailed her and I told her, you didn't think we were going to be able to make it. And she says, well, it's just that you were facing a lot of odds. And I said, well, it's been the story of my life facing the odds. It's now the people that are betting on me that have changed. But it's interesting.
That school is an amazing story. I worked with them. They had a grant, and you can literally see the border from the school. So,
James Albright, District of Columbia. I'd like us to think outside of the annual conference or in the training sessions or even our district perspective in terms of how we work together. And since the theme of a lot of the conference has been about technology, it's remarkable to me that we're not talking about partnering. I mean, I hear a lot about Philadelphia schools and Chicago schools and DC schools, but it's like, why aren't those principals all talking together in much smaller forums? The technology is there, the will is there, and it's very clear the need is there. But the stories that are being shared in Chicago are the same stories that are being shared in the District of Columbia, but we don't have to come to a conference where there really isn't time to chat about things unless you skip a session. There really should be a lot more opportunities for that kind of collegial work.
You know, that is a fantastic idea, right? There's got to be ways that we can get IB to help us get out from under the thumb, right? Because our time is so bogged by systemisms, right? I'm sorry, new word, right? We're just so bogged with all the stuff that we have to do. We don't even collaborate enough in Chicago, and we're in each other's backyard. So it would be great if even a conversation can go back to IB about how do we support schools that we deem IB worthy and get them out from under all the stuff they need to do in the districts around test scores, around conversations, and work with IB collaboratively, nation and worldwide, to have just a collective conversation and implementation about the work that we do. Great idea.
Good morning. My name is Elise Stallworth. I'm from Washington, D.C., and I have a little input on the question about the recruiting males and maintaining males. Before I became an assistant principal, I was also in central office and responsible for most of our middle schools as an instructional specialist. And one of the things I noticed, even as I transitioned into becoming an assistant principal, as I walked through the school, is one of the things you need to do is walk through your school and specifically look at and reflect on how everyone addresses the male. Doesn't matter if he's black or white. The school I'm in now is a very diverse school. And I saw teachers disciplining males for the same thing that they did not discipline girls for. And it didn't matter who they were. They were just boys. And that's something we don't look at and reflect on as educators, is how are we treating them, number one. For the African-American males, how are we perceiving them, and what do they feel coming from us? Do they feel that we expect certain things of them, that we believe in them? The panelists have shared that this morning about their particular school systems and their schools that they're working in. The first thing is the mindset of, I don't see you as who the media painted you as. Because in the scheme of things, and this is my belief, we don't teach poverty. So it doesn't matter when they walk into your room that they're poor. We don't teach their parents who are on drugs. We're teaching the children who they gave us. So if we can erase thinking about them as all of these other things and start thinking about them as who they are and the potential that they have. And these children are brilliant. I've met them, I've worked with them. And if they come to you and they can't multiply in the 12th grade, don't give them a calculator, because I've been the math teacher that's taught them their timetables that they remember in their heads without a calculator. And I taught higher level math. So start challenging. Let them know you believe in them. That's what the males need. They need to know that they're not going to be treated differently because they're males, no matter what their complexion. That girls are held to the same standard that they are, and that you believe that they are intelligent and can achieve. That's what they need you to do, and that's how you'll be able to retain and get those males to perform for you.
Thank you so much.
I'm Shaniska Howard. I'm from Charlotte Mecklenburg School Systems. That's my wonderful principal. You guys don't understand. It was a moment of relief when she walked through our doors. I've been at my school for 13 years, and we have been doing IB all of those years. We were authorized in 2011, so that should tell you the story there. One of the great things I think that Charlotte Mecklenburg does do is that we actually do have what is called a coordinators meeting. So once a month, all of the coordinators, PYP, MYP, and DP, we all get together to have conversations. One of the first things that I saw when at my very first meeting, I was the youngest coordinator, number one, and number two, I was at the only school that was not yet authorized that looked absolutely different than all the rest of the schools. When I invited the district to the meeting when we were going through our authorization, I made it a point to let those that were there know that we're pushing for a whole school model. Even though we knew that we were not going to get the clearance to be the elite IB school where you had to test to come into our school, we were going to offer a whole school model. And this is before my principal even walked through the door. This was my vision. And so it worked when those that are authorizing you are telling those who govern you that this is how it has to be. It kind of helped with the support that we needed to get the things done that we're doing. And I can simply say it's through the learner profiles, it's amazing how loving and how caring our scholars are, because when I tell you community action and service, they just come up with stuff. Anytime something is happening in the news, they read something and hear about something, they want to do a drive. Can we do this and can we do that? And that's when you know your IB program is taking a life of its own, is when the scholars in your building are taking ownership of it. And we're truly blessed to say that that's what's happening in our building.
Great. Do we have any more comments or questions?
Okay, my name is Brenda Gilmore, and I'm from Arlington, Texas, which is a huge metroplex. I always tell everybody that Fort Worth and Dallas are suburbs of Arlington. We have an enormous amount of IB schools in the metroplex, and we have organized ourselves through our TIBs a North Texas roundtable that meets twice a year. That's where we can come in and do what we've talked about with coordinators and teachers, drawing from each other. It also means we can go visit a lot of schools because we're in a very small area. Well, it's a huge area. Texas, it's a small area, okay? It's only 50, 60 miles. So that's helped. Another thing when you were talking about the males, I know this will surprise you. Football rocks in Texas, okay? However, I am very fortunate to have a group of coaches who put academics first. In fact, each year they make a poster of the athletes who are in the top 12, are in IB, or are accelerating scholars. So that's where I get a lot of my males, because they're like, well, can I play football and do IB? Because football is a time-consuming, or we do play basketball, not very well, but we do. Our girls' volleyball, you know, that kind of things. Soccer. If you have the support of those people, it's like having the support of your fine arts. But if you can get those coaches to say to that boy, that young man, why are you not challenging yourself in the classroom like you challenge yourself on the field? They'll come. You can build the field, but those coaches have to get them to come to you. And that's a fact of life, whether we like it or not. Whoever those young men will work for, if you can get them to push them to you. And I do have a lot of athletes, black, white, brown, every color. And it's because I have that support. So.
Hi, I'm Betty Wolfers from New Orleans, and my question's changed 3 times since I've listened to everybody, but I'll go back to my original question, because something I come to this conference from a different perspective, from a parent perspective, involved in immersion in international schools for 15 years. We've only had 1 child in the IB curriculum. But what I've noticed, and if you know the history of New Orleans and the situation we've been in, pre-Katrina, 90% of all our schools were taken over by the state and put in recovery districts. We only have 6 schools in our public school system. We're now a city of charter schools predominantly. And our second IB high school was certified last week, in fact, so we're happy about that. But from the perspective I'm coming from, And what I've noticed here in the rebuilding of our entire school system in this state, the most successful schools, regardless of socioeconomics, are the ones where there are strong PTOs, right behind the administration, right behind the supporting the teachers with everything. And I'd like to hear your take on what happened in your schools, and where do the parents play into supporting you or sometimes getting in your way also, and how do you keep that happy medium? Because we're all stakeholders, and parents from our parent group feel like we can help you move those programs forward and maybe create those boutique IB schools that you're looking for and still meet the international requirements.
So Smith is a very interesting phenomenon. We're in the middle of 100,000 acres of new development. Projects are torn down, indigenous population is still there, $1 million homes, $800,000 condos are being built all around our school. Those families, whether they be black or white, really don't want to go to school with Smith kids, right? So our parents that are there are involved in our school. So what does involvement mean, right? What does parent involvement look like, right? 95% of our kids come in uniform. When I call the parents, they will come, right? They're not doing bake sales, right? That's just not happening. But when we need them, they show up. That's parent involvement. Now, the community that's moving into Smith feels that they can come to Smith and say, well, you know what, I know more than you about teaching, and I really know how to help these kids because you're not doing well, and we want to partner with you, or we want to integrate. Well, when black people hear that, that means takeover, right? So I'm having a difficult time trying to integrate my population, right? Because I have to think about the indigenous people, and I also have to think about the people that are coming. So our conversations are very difficult. We have to get to the race conversation. We have to get to the equity and fairness conversation. But parents are always welcome at Smith. They can come, they can be involved, they can do volunteer on the playground, volunteer in classrooms. But we have to help parents, just like we have to help children, own their child's learning, right? Because we've been institutionalized so long, we don't trust the school, we don't trust the teachers, we don't trust the message that they're telling us. We've made a lot of progress in the years that I've been there, but there's still a lot more work to do.
I would say parent involvement is one of our major barriers. Our parents are there when we need them. We're a uniform school as well. It's amazing when parents will come and for what they will come up for, but I have to remind my staff and administrating food is actually not even working anymore. That actually doesn't get them there. So we really have to be creative in what we see as involvement, and so sending your scholar to school on time every day in uniform is involvement for many of my families, because they're working 2 and 3 jobs, or they're being raised by grandma and grandpa or auntie or whomever. We've also really taken to social media. It's just the way of the world, and we've just had to. And so I would love to have my parents in the building, but guess what? We're a 9:15 to 4:15 school. By the time you get all the kids home, we eat dinner, guess what? It's time to start the routine all over again. And so we just have to be realistic. So we are on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're tweeting, Facebooking all the time. And that's a way that we engage with our parents, and parents will write back notes of, hey, that's a wonderful event that's going on, can't make it, or whatever the case is. So I would say just be creative. It's very disheartening though, because I have 1,000 scholars, right? That's a lot of parents. The most we get is through open house, but we also try to figure out when can we maximize that. We know every parent wants to come see their child perform and do well. And so guess what? When we have arts night, we try to roll up a lot of things in that, because we have over 400 folks that come. So you just have to open your mind. We don't have a fully operating PTSA. I have 2 amazing parents, and their scholars will be 8th graders next year. And they've worked like crazy, but our parents are not going to come to PTSA meetings and sit and talk about stuff. That's just not going to happen. And I'm okay with it.
Our parents also probably won't come to PTA meetings because we don't share a common language. Most of the minorities in our school, are children of or recently the recent refugees or children of recent refugees. So there are significant language barriers. So I'm curious, what has been successful in your schools? Can somebody give me some ideas of what we can do to help build our PTA, especially in light of language barriers? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andre Samuels from Washington, D.C. One thing that really worked for us with getting parents involved was arming students with their data. I think sometimes as administrators or as educators, we can either, one, be data rich, analysis poor, or we just have this big wall of data with index cards and stars and paper clips of different students with different disabilities or different reading interventions. But giving students their information, making them advocates for themselves, and then also going and having those conversations with their parents, that actually helped get parents more involved, so we spoke that common language. So we're now breaking the data down when students are now, instead of arguing over Facebook beef, they're arguing over Lexile scores. And so they're having that conversation, that competition to raise their level of reading, level of instruction, and level of understanding. And then moving that information over to the home, and then parents have more questions about what their children are talking about. It actually brought parents into our building more. Besides social media, Twitter, Facebook, all those great things, there's an app called Remind 101, where you can send text messages directly to families by grade or by individual student, where you're always bringing families in. Also, there's a website called Ngrade that many school districts have now, where educators put all grades online, and families can log in to read emails from their educators, from their classroom educators. But one thing that's very clear that we had our educators log into Ngrade every week. So first and third week, they would do an email to families as to how you can best help your student and what's coming up in objectives. And then the second and fourth week, they would upload grades. So there was a constant conversation between families and educators, and then that would bring them in to ask more questions.
Thank you. This has been great, and I worried about filling the time, but I think we're going to almost go over. So I'm going to have one more comment, and then I want to close out with a video from John Smith School Magnet, because I think that it shows, and we can't go to these schools, unfortunately, but it shows, you'll see your school, and it's good.
Hi, my name is Lisa. I am at a high school in the Bay Area in California. We're a large comprehensive high school. We're about 60-something% Latino, a very large English language learner student body. And our challenge, our teachers and our administrators are very on board to try to make sure our IB classes look like our general population, and it's a struggle. We have a lot of work to do. And within that struggle is the students who wind up dropping IB courses, whether it's between the 11th and 12th grade or within one of the grades, are disproportionately our Latino students. So retention is a big issue that we need help and strategies in. It does go to what you're saying about the 9th, 10th. We have resources, we have after school free tutoring, we have amazing teachers that will stay as late as the kids need them to, and that's still not enough. So I'm curious of, in your high school, if you have had successful programs or if other people. And that also, in terms of what IB can do, I think it would be helpful for IB to even have the different programs like targeted down to high schools and specific strategy for high school students versus middle school versus elementary.
Very briefly, I'll just say we have a fantastic AVID program. I don't know if any of your schools have AVID. We have a massive AVID program, and that is huge support within the school. You have to get that critical mass going, where students see, oh, the kids in that class look just like me. I can take that class, and then before you know it, your classes look representative of your whole school. There can be little gatekeeping things along the way. Certainly as students get older, certainly in my school, perhaps yours, students are expected to bring more money home to support the family. So maybe talking with your teachers about how much homework is being assigned, how much homework really needs to be assigned to achieve the goals you're trying to reach. That there may be little gatekeeping things that are happening that are happening even with the best intentioned teachers. So just a couple starting places.
And IB has been tossing around and working on, and it's not rolled out, but we have been having this conversation about putting together some kind of like emergency room treatment. I mean, things like going specifically to a school that's having difficulty and having people that are really, talented and have knowledge about curriculum, about your kind of school, whatever that would be, to go to you and say, look at your school and then give you some really strong advice and leadership on what to move forward. So hopefully I will take back from this workshop that is something that I think people would really like to have. So, okay. So thank you for staying. That's okay. Through the whole thing, and I want to close out with this video that's just been uploaded on their website, and there's some other really good ones there, but this is Ron's school. Yes. It's right behind you, yeah. It's in there, yeah. No, it's not. That one, yeah, there you go. Thank you. Well, we hope.
Should we take that comment while we wait?
Yeah. Oh, we can take that question or comment.
I think AVID is a wonderful program, but I was trying to figure out how do you get the two to coexist in a building, because AVID requires one period where that class period is AVID, and then the student must take either a foreign language or a high-level math, and IB really requires both. So I worked in one building where eventually we, I guess, kept the tenets of AVID, but we had to get rid of AVID because we could not do both.
We have a 7-period day for better or for worse. So that's how it happens. I mean, a student doesn't, they have to have 6 diploma program subjects. There's some flexibility there about what they are. So that is a way around it. And some kids, unfortunately, have had to let AVID go in 12th grade.
Shakira Williams, and you're now tuned in to
Love technology.
Did anyone else have solutions, ideas for that, responses to that question?
I mean, we have a large AVID program that works very collaboratively with the IT program. We have a 7-period day. If an AVID student needs TOK for full diploma, we do TOK this first semester senior year, second semester senior. We'll do if it blocks and they have 8 classes, then we'll put them on independent study for AVID.
Yeah.
Do you have MYP at your school?
We are starting MYP next year.
Yeah. Because MYP, I feel like MYP does a lot of the things AVID does. It teaches the kids the study skills and how to narrow topics. How to do
Media One.
Oh, come on.
One thing that's worked well for my diploma program is having entry point classes, economics, SL, film. Those are good classes that kids who normally wouldn't do IB might do, and it'll bring them into the program.
Finally.
Just lay the mic.
Should we just... Because it's going to take a while.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
loading.
Yeah.
What?
We
Yeah.
yeah. Do we
Yeah,
have to-
I need to let you, I'm sorry, but you,
Elementary,
Here.
SmithIvyWorld.org. It's a video that we've just done. It has parents, some of our teachers on it, and it's just really talking about some of the issues we face in our community. SmithIvyWorld.org. It's a very cool website. Check it out. SMYTH.
yes, just go to the internet and just click on it, and you can watch it. Thank you for coming. I wish I could take all of you back home to the office with me. Thank you. Have a good rest of the conference.
I'm probably committed and unauthorized staff, but they don't care.